should be good to go, Dominic.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Eric. Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for January 12th, 2022. If you could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if we could have Noreen, if you could do the roll call, I'd appreciate it.
Surely. Chairman Payne,
Here.
Commissioner Clappy,
Here.
Commissioner Fox,
Here.
Commissioner Haggerty,
Here.
Commissioner Havens,
Here.
Commissioner Linares,
Here.
Commissioner Woods,
Here.
Commissioner Braverman,
Here.
Commissioner Gill.
Here.
All set.
Very good, thank you. All right, we're at approval for the
You're welcome.
agenda. I'll turn it over to Renata for a minute. We have a couple things to add, right, Renata?
Could have had the shock of your life.
Mr. Chair, as you know, we amended the agenda to add an item that was placed on the revised agenda that was actually posted yesterday. The Segregate Group and the Center for Latino Progress had approached us on Friday and asked to be introduced tonight, or actually to come and introduce to you their upcoming walk audit and workshop to explore transit-oriented opportunities at Newington Junction. So that is a new item on your agenda. With that, I believe that you may also consider revising order of the agenda to hear the presentation on the Anna Reynolds School prior to opening the public hearings tonight. So those are the items that I believe we discussed as perhaps changes to the agenda tonight.
So we're adding the desegregation Connecticut, and then Ann Reynolds Building Committee project will be after remarks for commissioners. If there's no objection from the commissioners to amend the agenda like that.
None here.
Very good, thank you. We'll go into public participation now. Public participation for items not listed on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. Within the Zoom application, raise your hand if you'd like to participate during public participation. If calling into Zoom meeting by telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand to be recognized. Use *6 when recognized to speak by telephone. And please remember to state your name and address for the record. Is there anybody wishing to speak?
I don't see anyone with their hand raised right now, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll go right into the zoning enforcement officer report.
Yes, you have before you the report. There's a number of items on there. Most of them have been resolved. At this point, there's still a couple hanging open. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to field them. And I have a couple other items when I'm done with that.
Okay, very good. Any questions from the commissioners concerning any of the zoning enforcement officers report?
I got one. Eric, did you have an update on that one I sent in for Main Street? Like 867 or?
I did take a look at that when I was by there. I did see some snow blowers out on the side of the house or in the back there. I didn't see an inordinate amount. The last time I was by there, I'm just continuing to keep an eye on it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Claffey. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, why don't you proceed, Eric, with the other things that you have?
Okay. So I've also been tasked with reviewing old bonds that the town is still holding them from the finance department. And a number of these go back to the late 70s as well. So in the past month or so, I have been able to release about $4,300 in bond money that the town was holding. And I'm, doing some in-depth research on the other ones, the larger bonds. With a lot of these corporations are probably defunct or out of business. So I'll gather this information to present to the town attorney at some point to see how they want to proceed with some of those funds that are still being held, or legally what we can do.
There was a number of them that we went over with the previous town planner. Were those all taken care of, Eric?
I believe a lot of those were taken care of, that Craig looked at. These are other ones that finance found that they were open, and they were mostly small,
Okay.
500 to 3,500 bucks, stuff like that, and a lot of the really old ones. But yeah, I think the prior planner did take care of a lot of the ones that you had asked them to do.
Okay.
The other item that was brought up at the last meeting was about, I guess, what we call repeat offenders with zoning violations. And somebody asked, well, what can we do about that? And I did inquire with the town attorney. And as we suspected, once they correct the violation, the clock starts over again. So for instance, if somebody puts up banners on the turnpike, and then I send them the notice and they rectify the issue, if they put them up again in 2 weeks, this is the process that I have to deal with. So.
Okay. Very good.
And that's it.
If I may,
Yep.
if I may add to this point, in addition to just providing you with this information, one of the things that Eric and I have discussed was, and this is mainly related to enforcement of blight ordinance, but to some extent will also apply to repeat offenders with zoning violations. We will develop a spreadsheet of these historic offenders and look into how can we do sort of scheduled inspections, because what generally happens is there is a violation, Eric does enforcement action, people comply, and then a few months down the road, because we bring it to compliance, we no longer go and inspect, right? For us, the item is finished. Few months down the road, we have the repeat problem. So this perhaps can't work for the signage, because signage offenders can tend to be a little bit more brazen, but it can work for some other historic repeat of zoning offenses as well as blight. So we will do it that way, and hopefully that will produce a little bit more of consistent long-term results over time.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Renata. Is there any questions from the commissioners for either Renata or Eric? Any questions from the commissioners? Okay, hearing none. We will move to our first public hearing, and I'll ask if Commissioner Havens could read the procedures for the public hearing.
Chairman, we actually have remarks by commissioners now, I believe.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're gonna. Go ahead,
Renata?
Renata.
We do the,
So if we can do the remarks by commissioners, and then I think the commission agreed to do the Anna Reynolds presentation first.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Is there any other remarks from commissioners? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the collaborative meeting with the town council, I forget when it was already, I had brought up the name of a property owner on Willard Avenue, and we all know who that is, only as a way of showing that there could be a perception of wrongdoing possibly, and I had no malice, no bad intent. So if anybody did take offense, I apologize, and I of course apologize to my old friend Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox. Is there any other comments from the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, we're going to proceed to the Ann Reynolds Building Committee project presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate you allowing us the time, especially early in the meeting, to present this project. My name is Jennifer Manjali. I'm the project architect for the Anna Reynolds School project. And with me tonight, our design team, a couple of our design team members are Brennan White. He's a landscape architect also with Castle Booz Associates. Rob Newton, a civil engineer with BSC Group, sorry. He's one of our consultants. And also attending this meeting as a part of the project team is Tom DeMoro. He's with Newfield Construction Group, representing the construction manager. This project recently received Conservation Commission approval. And although the project is exempt from zoning, this is a courtesy presentation that we'd like to do for you.
And we are sharing the screen, so if you have plans, you can certainly bring them up.
Excellent, thank you.
Can I share the screen, Jennifer? It says it's disabled.
Oh, is it only for me? I wouldn't imagine it's only for me.
No, it should. I don't know, Renata, are you able to allow me to share a screen?
Everybody, I believe everybody should be able to share the screen. I don't see any restrictions on our end.
Right.
Yeah. From where I am, it says host is disabled, participate,
Right.
screen sharing.
That's what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
there we go.
See if I can find it. Hold on.
I think I got it here.
Yeah, I
There
we go.
clicked something.
You guys see it?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
You're good.
Great, thanks. There has been discussion with town staff that have recently reviewed the project, and at this point, we've addressed any staff comments to date, and we will continue to address any comments that come up as we complete the design for this project. The existing facility here that's shown on the screen in an aerial photo, that will remain as its current use as an elementary school. The project includes renovations of the existing building, which is approximately 69,000 gross square feet, and will include a small elevator addition, which is only around 500 square feet. The project will also include improvements to the site, interior finishes, and infrastructure. And the project will receive funding from the state of Connecticut. There is a school construction grant associated with this. I'm going to turn it over to Brennan so he can walk you through the site improvements and site circulation.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. And everybody can see my screen and the cursor?
Yes.
Okay, great. As Jennifer mentioned, this is Anna Reynolds Elementary School. The main entrance is located right here. And just generally, on these plans, north is down here on the screen. The main entrance drive right here, parent drop-off, parking area, service area, bus drop-off occurs right along here. And this is one-way access through the site from Reservoir Road out to Fenn Road right now. Play areas around, paved areas, playing field. So generally, one of the main goals of this, we're tasked with is trying to improve the circulation, vehicular, pedestrian circulation on site for safety. Currently today, the circulation is very congested as buses and parents and other traffic go through the site. Drop off occurs in the morning. It's represented by this graphic in the red, conflicts between parents and buses as buses come off to the side here, stack. And once again, as they exit out the Fenn Road, there's more congestion and conflicts. So that occurs in the morning and in the afternoon. And this is a great opportunity, this project to really help the situation is to improve it, eliminate the conflicts between the parent and the bus drop off. So as we go to our proposed plan, you'll see that we're separating parent drop off. We're extending the drop off along the main main entrance here, allowing the parents to come in and actually loop back out Reservoir Road, and buses to come in and loop, essentially having their own bus loop and back out to the Fen Road. So that is, as part of this project, we've expanded some of the parking. The existing parking count is around 98 spaces. We're now up at 114, so we've gained some spaces. Provided handicap accessibility to the main entrance, accessible drop-offs, as well as after hours and at other times of events, having a separation here with a lift gate, which will allow them to, the school and administration to open that gate and allow, use of all the parking area. But this gate also allows safe student crossing to the facility, to the school. As Jennifer mentioned, there is in addition to the school, approximately 500 square feet, an elevator addition for accessibility within the school. She'll talk about that a little bit later. Across the site, generally, it will be completely renovated. New pavement, new curbing, lighting, which will be contained, new lighting, LED fixtures, which full cutoff. The photometrics have been run. We've worked with the town staff and really this whole project submitted through to the staff for their review, and really address comments, any comments that they might have had. The lighting is contained on the property, no spill off into the adjacent neighbors' properties. We've got new sidewalks. As I mentioned before, accessibility throughout the site is key to, especially these state projects, in which we've provided accessibility throughout. We've got perimeter play areas, which existing play areas will remain. New pavement will be replaced around the school. We've got a number of outdoor educational spaces and gathering spaces, a nice new main entrance plaza, and as I mentioned, kind of this expanded parent drop-off. So really a nice, renovation of the entire facility. And Jennifer can talk about the building improvements. I should also mention that we've gone through Conservation Commission and received approval. And I'll move to the building.
Thank you, Brennan. This is just an overall floor plan. The building is generally one floor, one story. There is a small portion that has a basement below for some storage and utilities, and a small fan room on an upper level adjacent to the gymnasium, same height as the gym. Overall, the layout of spaces is generally staying the same, in that assembly areas are staying where they are now. The gym, cafeteria, media center, those aren't being relocated. We are upgrading and updating some the classrooms throughout, but the classroom wings are still classroom wings. The main entrance is staying in the same location, but will be upgraded. The elevator addition is shown on the screen as it highlighted in yellow area, and that elevator is helping to traverse a stair that's in the main corridor of the building that has an 8-foot elevation change, and the elevator will help us navigate around that stair for those that won't be able to use it. So that's the major accessibility upgrade in the building, though there are other accessibility upgrades throughout. As far as the exterior goes, I'd like to mention that there is a complete window replacement and exterior door replacement for this facility with better performing and energy efficient windows, meeting the building code requirements. And some of the facade is staying brick masonry as it is now, existing masonry, but there are other portions, the classroom wings in particular, where we are completely replacing the exterior envelope, which is existing. Currently, there's existing panels that aren't very energy efficient, old window systems that also aren't energy efficient, and we are completely replacing the exterior walls on the classroom wings. And though the replacement, if you can advance to the next slide, Brennan, the proposed materials and replacement would be metal wall panels for the classroom wings, new operable windows, as I mentioned, and precast concrete base. It's about 3'4" high below the windows and metal wall panels so that we have a durable base to the building. The next slide will show a rendering of the main entrance, which will also be upgraded with some of those same materials, as well as keeping some of the existing brick masonry. The main entrance we're proposing would now have a canopy, a nice covering over the entranceway. Right now there isn't a canopy at all. So that should help get people out of the weather. The circulation Brennan already mentioned, as well as a new plaza and plantings, benches, things like that at that new main entrance. The height of the building conforms to the zoning requirements. So I do want to mention that.
Jennifer, in terms of the other zoning requirements, we tried to conform with, the zoning requirements, and the project meets all setback regulations throughout. And there are some areas that we've tried to reduce the asphalt pavement, and actually this previous picture here, we're taking out some asphalt in the play area to kind of give them another lawn area to be able to play on. Also there are stormwater improvements throughout the project as well, underground detention system. Generally, the utilities that come into the site will remain, new transformer to service the building, in addition to the existing one. So really just a renovation of the facility and school.
Great.
Looks very nice.
Thank you. So at this point, just in conclusion, we're currently finalizing the design, and the construction manager plans to publicly bid the project approximately the end of February. We anticipate construction to begin in June when the school year ends, and continue for a couple of years, concluding in fall of 2024. And that's it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Is there any questions from the commissioners? Thank you very much for that presentation. You've done an excellent job.
Thank you again for your time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we will go to the public hearing, first public hearing. Before I do, Commissioner Havens, if you could read the procedures for the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman. Procedures for public hearings. The order of proceedings is as follows. By the designated by the chairman to act in his and location of the property involved by the statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman. Presentation by applicant limit is granted by the chair. application, limited to 2 minutes per person. Speak in opposition to the application. H, rebuttal by the applicant. I, rebuttal by the opposition. Limit. Public hearing shall be within the discretion of the varied slightly, provided the commission. In no case shall an extension be from 1 minute, whichever is greater.
Thank you, Commissioner Havens. Our first public hearing is petition 53-21, special permit, section 3.11.14 to allow apartments in a business building at 566 New Britain Avenue. Applicant and contact Wislow Cosme, owner. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
If you'd like to explain a little bit about what you're doing, and then we can always go to the town planner.
Okay, so first I want to thank again for allowing the change and to allow the apartments on the second, third floor of the buildings in the B zone in Newington. And with this being said, we would like to apply for a special permit to change our second floor of the building on 566 New Britain Avenue to put over there 2 one-bedroom apartments, which will allow some additional affordable housing in the town of Newington. As of now, I already have my potential tenants, which will be my son, who's also here with us, and also my parents-in-law, who are very interested to live there. Yes, and we already have proposal. I don't know if I should share my screen to show some plans, or
if you'd like to.
Sure, I can try. Yep. Oh, they already.
Yep, they're there.
Thank you. So yes, so here we see the basic sketch of the floor plan that we would like to propose for the second floor. So on the left side, that's the side of the building which is to the front of the street. There will be like a living room, bedroom, closet in the bedroom, kitchen, separate staircase to the outside. And on the left side, this unit will be facing to the back of the building, and same pretty big size living room, bedroom with a closet, bathroom with a very good size kitchen, and we have to add additional staircase to the outside of the building. So both units will have separate staircases, which will not be linked to the business part of the commercial part of the building, which will be downstairs. And which apartment will be about like a little bit over 600 to 700 square feet. And then here on this map, we see some of the fulfillments, which are the requirements for this petition. So we're proposing 12, maybe 13 parking spaces. One will be on the paper street, which is called Arlington Avenue. There will be like 7 spaces, and then 5, maybe 6 additional spaces. We'll see, all depends how the grading will go on the right side of the building. One of the other requirements is the green area, which is like a minimum 1,000 square feet per unit, per apartment. That's just roughly a minimum of 3,000 square feet on front of the building. There will be probably like additional 1,000 or 2,000 square feet more, but that's just like a rough idea. Just to fulfill the requirements. Yeah, so the building itself, it's on the like almost 0.6 acre lot, which is pretty good size, I think. I mean, there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of space for the parking spot, green area. So that really shouldn't change the way everything is gonna, be within the street, because the parking, the grading there doesn't have to change much. The building shape and everything will not change much. The only thing will be just this additional staircase on the rear right corner of the building. In addition, to have the apartments on the commercial building in the Bison on the second floor, there are some requirements which we also will fulfill with once we get into the plans and into the permits. We will create a special soundproofing between the business part of the building and the apartments. Like I mentioned, there will be separate staircases, and we already did meet once with the building inspector. Everything will be on the building on the first floor will have all the 1 hour walls and ceilings for the safety protection for the fireproofing. That's pretty much the base overview. Here we see the map of the first floor since we already have it. So the letter plan. So we're still gonna keep as it is right now, like 2 business units on the second floor. One will probably keep for ourselves, and the other one will be available to be rented out for offices, for maybe the hairdresser of a unit like it was there in the past. Everything is still there. We didn't even remove the stuff. So it all depends what kind of needs there will be in Newington. Since mostly all the walls and everything will be new, we can adapt the unit to the requirements, to the needs of the potential future tenant. That's
very good. That was very good. Thank you very much. I'll go to any commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Claffey.
Quick question. Can we bring it back to the parking and like a site plan? This isn't the house at the corner of Berkeley Place and New Britain Avenue, is it?
No, this is like a second building from Berkeley.
Okay. So, and I guess the second question is maybe for our planner or our assistant planner. That paper street, is that not an access to a house that's in the way back there? Or an access point for the vacant lots or unbuildable lots that might still be back in that little section?
What I can say from what I know is Arlington Avenue is a paper street. It is owned by the town because it actually was deeded to the town at one point in the past.
Okay.
Residents that front actually Berkeley Place do use it as a rear access to their properties. There's a number of properties back there that have done that in the past. There have been no concerns or issues that I'm aware of along that area of property.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, as a paper street, we have a maybe too many paper streets in Newington. I'm trying to get to the concern of where we're pulling like distances for the parking spaces. It just seems like a lot of parking spaces.
Yeah, so I can comment on this a little bit. So together with Eric, we especially the parking space right by the street, by this paper street, Arlington Avenue, the parking spaces will be placed according to the code, a minimum 5 feet away from this paper street. So if for some reason, at one point town will decide to pave the road, the parking spaces will be still within the code, within the requirements of like regular street.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Claffey or Chairman Payne, perhaps the applicant would also be amenable to planting some kind of buffer between those parking spaces and the road, if that helps.
No, I don't. I used to live at 630 New Britain Avenue, so you know, I get the whole paper street, the long driveways, etc. I guess I'm a little, I guess I'm more concerned with the, you know, why, I don't know, it's weird, you know, from the satellite image, it looks like, and I haven't driven specific past that house. I used to walk by it hundreds of times a year. I thought it's just a weird place to place the parking. That's all. It just seems a little odd. Off the paper street, you're putting the driveway basically with no real, like, the definition of our paper streets is kind of very loose with our engineering department. And I just say that because down the road, when I know a couple people that live off paper streets, and then they've tried to come for zoning stuff, and they've come for, you know, ZBA, zoning board of appeals, to, you know, do some additions. They just come. It's just odd that we're going to put a parking lot or a parking driveway directly, literally on the paper street.
Well,
So if I may just comment for a moment.
No,
This
fine.
appears to be somewhat of a current existing condition on this property. As you can see from the aerial photograph, like, this area seems to be where currently the business occupants are parking anyways. So I personally believe that it's better to use this particular way of accessing the property than to create a whole other curb cut onto New Britain Avenue, just to avoid accessing the property off of the paper street.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree, Renata. I just think the location of the back right for the parking, okay, it's like a driveway in. It's just, I don't know many places where your driveway basically is drive right off the paper street and you're into a parking space. It's very odd. I understand, you know, for a residential, I know it's a commercial building, but you're trying to convert it to residential. You know, I don't know of many places, you know, other than a commercial structure like the liquor store that's there, and the old dance studio that used to be there, and hair salon in that red roofed corner building, which looks a lot better over the years than it did back in 2004 with how they used to park. So I just brought it up. I don't live there now, but I could see that maybe, you know, I'm not asking for buffer. I'm just trying to understand our paper street regulation so it doesn't affect the future of future of this property. If in 5 years he wants to sell the house, you know what I mean? I'm just throwing it out there. Just paper streets get to be very technical, and we haven't really, I don't think, devised a plan of how to do it. And here, you know, I don't see a problem with moving forward. I just think there needs to be a little discussion on how you're going to put 7 spots. You know, it's like parallel parking at Main Street at downtown Newington, the same concept. It's like a paper street cuts right off Main Street in front of, you know, the Trek bike, you know, just an odd place for putting parking. That's all.
Okay. Anything else? Any other comments from commissioners, other commissioners? Renata, do you have anything? Would you like to give a report on anything?
Well, not particularly anything that is not included in Eric's memo. As you can see, this is an application that we recently, within 2021, actually have amended zoning regulations to allow this type of use. So in 2021, at one point early in 2021, we changed the regulations to allow residential uses in business zone, as long as these uses were to be located on the top floor of an existing, you know, commercial use building. So with that in mind, you know, a couple of things that we observed when we visited this property was that the parking needed to be paved or surfaced. Right now, it is really not paved. The areas where currently this property is being parked is not necessarily paved. There are a couple of structures, those canvas hoop structures that are placed in the location that is not really allowed per our regulations. So one of the condition is that those be just relocated to a different part of the property where they could be okay. And then there is some construction equipment, stuff like that. So, you know, you can see in our memo, essentially, the stuff that we recommend as a condition of the approval if the commission proceeds to approve this special permit. When you look at this under special permit, you're looking at impacts. So will this create additional traffic? Will this create additional utility impact? Will this somehow affect neighborhood? The house will not change in its appearance. The additional few cars that will be parked there because of these tenants probably will have minor to no impact to the neighborhood out there. That also is the same case as far as the traffic generation. We're talking about New Britain Avenue, few more cars should not make that big of a difference. So I feel that the commission, I recommend the commission approves this subject to these conditions that are all essentially related to the site more than the use itself.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other questions from the commissioners? If not, I'll proceed to the public. Let's see if anybody from the public would like to speak in favor of this application. Now would be your time.
I see no one on the line at the moment.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Again, I see no one with their hand raised.
Okay, hearing none. How did the commissioners feel? Do you want to, do you feel comfortable closing this and moving it to the agenda, or I'll look to the commission for some input?
I look to close it and move it forward. My more comments were answered appropriately.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chairman Claffey. Has a motion on the table to close petition 53-21 and move to old business. Is there a second?
Second,
Commissioner Havens.
Seconded by Commissioner Havens. All right. And Noreen, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Sure. Commissioner Claffey,
Yes.
Commissioner Fox,
yes.
Commissioner Haggerty,
Yes.
Commissioner Havens,
Yes.
Commissioner Linares,
Yeah.
Commissioner Woods,
Yes.
Chairman Payne,
Yes.
unanimous.
Very good. Thank you, Noreen.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next public hearing that we have, if I could have Commissioner Haggerty, if you could read it, I'd appreciate it. Petition 54-21.
Yep. Petition 54-21, zoning text amendment, section 3.19.2.B.1, to delete the requirement that residential developments in the PD zone be located on sites with direct access to the Berlin Turnpike or streets that directly connect to the Berlin Turnpike. Applicant Alan Bongiovanni.
Thank you. Is the applicant here?
His representative is Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening. It's nice to see everyone again. My name is Bill Sweeney. I'm a partner and a land use attorney with the law firm of Tobin Carberry in New London. I appear before you tonight on behalf of Alan Bongiovanni, who is a resident of Newington, who is seeking tonight an amendment to section 3.19.2.B.1 of your zoning regulations to delete this provision in its entirety. Before I begin, I would remind the commission that this is a zoning text amendment application involving a modification of your zoning regulations governing the planned development district. This application is not associated with any specific development or any specific property, but it's rather one of general applicability to all of your planned development districts. Due to the fact that this is a change in your zoning regulations, I would also remind you that you sit tonight in a legislative capacity on the application. As the Commission's aware, your planned development district regulations, which are codified in sections 3.18 and 3.19, they permit a wide variety of commercial uses, as well as residential building development subject to special permit approval. And under section 3.19.2.b of your regulations, there are 9 conditions which govern the development of residential buildings in the planned development district. Specifically tonight, which is the reason we're here, the condition listed in section 319.2b1 restricts such residential building development to site locations that have, and I quote, direct access, end quote, to the Berlin Turnpike or to a public street which directly connects to the Berlin Turnpike. Tonight, Mr. Bongiovanni is seeking to delete this requirement altogether. From our perspective, it is poorly worded, and regardless of its proper interpretation, it's really unreasonably and unnecessarily creates obstacles to residential building development, and it's contrary to your plan of conservation and development. First, we would point out that the provision itself is terribly vague, and it cannot be easily or readily interpreted. The term, quote, again, direct access is undefined by your zoning regulation, and the term is not used anywhere else within your document or in any other manner within the document that could provide clues or context as to its actual meaning. The provision provides no guidance as to whether direct access means a vehicular driveway, a pedestrian sidewalk, a walking trail, or whether it simply means having frontage along one of the qualifying streets. It should be noted that it seems that the direct access language applies to providing direct access to the site location, but not necessarily to a residential building project built upon that site. In fact, the regulation is so poorly worded and so poorly drafted, it's not even clear whether direct access requires any physical improvement to be built to comply with the condition. Now, arguably, the purpose of this condition, and I know your planner has provided some information on sort of the history of the regulation in the staff report. Arguably, the purpose of this condition may be to indirectly attempt to control traffic flow within the planned development district by limiting the eligibility of certain sites in that area and in the vicinity of the Berlin Turnpike. But it should be noted that even if the condition was somehow interpreted to require an actual vehicular driveway connecting to a particular street, nothing in the provision as it's written today would preclude a developer or a property owner from proposing additional vehicle access points to a project, even primary access points from other non-qualifying streets. And from our perspective, this very fact makes the condition confusing. And it's quite unclear what the purpose and the value of it is to the community, other than creating an arbitrary obstacle for residential development on otherwise suitable lots that may exist in the planned development district. Most importantly, though, the site location condition provided in section 3.19.2.b doesn't make any sense whatsoever when you acknowledge the fact that Newington has multiple planned development districts. And if I may, I'd like to put up and share on the screen your zoning map. Is that okay if I do that?
Yes, absolutely. No problem.
Thank you. Can everybody see that okay? Okay. So the requirement of a connection to the Berlin Turnpike makes little sense, considering that while many parcels that are in the PD district, and the PD districts in Newington are labeled here in bright red, there are multiple other separate planned development districts located in other areas of the community, sometimes very distant from the Berlin Turnpike. And there are dozens of lots scattered throughout the community, nowhere near the Berlin Turnpike or a connecting street that would be basically precluded from development. And again, from our perspective, to preclude the possible development of residential buildings at literally numerous sites throughout the community, some of which might be wholly appropriate and suitable and can be properly vetted by this commission through the special permit review process, defies any common sense from our perspective and good planning policy. And further, and perhaps more importantly, and I know your staff in her report raises this issue as well, there is no similar site location restriction on other uses which are permitted as by right or by special permit in the planned development district, including much more intense commercial uses which generate far greater traffic than any residential development. For example, a major shopping center anchor store like a Home Depot or a Walmart, which clearly, and I think we can all agree, will generate much greater traffic than any possible residential development, can be constructed on any lot within the planned development district, any lot that's shown in red on this map, and can be accessed from any street in the community without consideration of connection or proximity of the Berlin Turnpike. If the purpose of this section 319 2B1 is to somehow indirectly control traffic, we assert to you that it fails miserably, and it only hamstrings developers and property owners from developing residential buildings in suitable locations or putting in access at points that are unnecessary. As I mentioned previously, the proposed zoning text amendment that we've put forward tonight would delete this section in its entirety. It should be reiterated, and I would remind the commission that any proposed residential development within the planned development district is still subject to special permit approval. And the traffic generation and impact of any proposed residential development must still be vetted by this commission and considered prior to any action on a forthcoming special permit application. So in other words, if this section is removed, you still have the power to look at traffic and make sure that traffic is properly dealt with any pending application. So in conclusion tonight, I would note that the proposed deletion is also consistent with your plan of conservation and development. Our text amendment deletes what is a poorly drafted and almost unintelligible restriction on residential development. You have, by statute, an ongoing obligation to maintain coherent zoning regulations that further the goals and the policies of your plan of conservation and development. And the POCD, if you look at it carefully, makes clear that diversifying and creating housing opportunities in Newington is a major goal of this community. It's important for the health and the success of the town going forward. Having unnecessary restrictions on quality residential development runs directly counter to that principle. Many of the planned development districts in Newington are also identified opportunity areas where the POCD charges this commission with, I quote, maximizing possibilities for development and reinvestment, not further restricting them or allowing obstacles to new projects to remain in place. The POCD also calls for the commission to continue on an ongoing basis to review and update their zoning regulations and their zoning map to ensure the appropriateness and compatibility of development options. Now, again, while the purpose of this text change is to remove this vaguely worded regulation that arbitrarily restricts residential development, the proposed deletion also serves the larger purpose at the end of the day of promoting new economic development and reinvestment in your community. So with that, thank you for your time and attention tonight. I'm going to remain available if you have any questions, and I certainly reserve the right of rebuttal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We'll go to the town planner, see if she would like to give a report on this, and then we'll go to questions for the commissioners.
Sure, Mr. Chair. So I have not too much to add to this. In an essence, as you can see in the memo that I provided to you, we did some research as to how did this provision became a part of our zoning regulations. And our research indicates that in 1974, the Town Planning and Zoning Commission essentially changed what used to be a restricted commercial zone, changed the name of that zoning district and adopted it as planned development zone. And at that time, at the time of this adoption, the apartment buildings were allowed by special permit in this original PD zone. There were no special rules that we were able to find that were related at the time of the adoption of the PD zone to access to Berlin Turnpike or any other specific, or any other street specific to that. And then at some point between then and at least August of 1988, this provision appeared in our regulations. So the first time we were able to find it in the regulations was in 1988. So the provision existed on our books, for 40 years, since 80s. And while we were not able to locate the original minutes to tell me exactly what the commission was thinking, like what were the motives to including this provision, to me, it seems that it's very likely that the attempt was one of two things, either to control traffic on residential streets or to control multifamily residential developments, period. So if the intent of this provision was to control traffic, this particular provision, I say in the memo, I don't believe that it's very helpful for the reasons that our Attorney Sweeney had brought some of these up already. The restriction only applies to residential developments in the zoning district. It does not preclude other much more higher intensity traffic generators from using those residential streets. So, if that's the intent, then that intent has not been met by this regulation. It's met for residential, but not for the other things. I discuss under my second point how we control traffic numbers and review traffic numbers. The commission is actually required under special permit to review traffic impact. And there are certain provisions in our regulations that demand that we get certain studies and reports, etc. And you as a commission are actually mandated to consider those. So when traffic is a subject, once uses are set and the zoning districts are mapped, the best way to understand it is on the case-by-case basis, because then you get like actual understanding as to what happens with the development. Now, aside from that, when you have to also consider traffic very much so is when you are adopting zoning regulations and adopting uses within those zoning regulations. But I believe that creating provisions for the uses is improper way to control traffic impacts. So the right way is look at your uses once you are adopting your zoning regulations. When you are adopting zoning regulations for B zone, look at list of your uses, look at your zoning map, look at the streets, look at the neighborhood, and figure, and that's the time when we say, what do these uses mean to the traffic on these streets? That conversation is what appropriate at that stage. And then the next level when the conversation is appropriate is when a business B comes in at a specific site, and then you look at it and say that business generates 30,000 vehicles per hour on Saturday morning or something like that, right? And then lastly, I talk about this this issue that the PD zone has districts, that the zone itself actually is found across town. So it's not, the restriction impacts differently parcels in different parts of the town. Now, if the intent of this provision was to regulate residential developments, period, then what I can tell you on that end is that we have a couple of zoning districts where we allowed multifamily housing. R7 and R12 allow multifamily, but you have to have a parcel that's 10 acres to start with. You have to have an 8,000 square feet of land per dwelling unit. I do not know that we have any R7 or R12 parcel that meets those criteria. So with that in mind, you know, we probably don't have a single parcel in those zoning districts that's conducive to multifamily housing development. We have a residential design zone. That zoning district is set at a density of 3.5 units per acre, which is quite high. We require that the development cannot exceed more than 25% area of a land. Again, like you have to have a very large parcel to develop 1/4 of it. So that's another intensive requirement. We have a TVDD zone, which is specific as to both location, type, and manner of development. So TVDD zone is that overlay district by the Cedar Street. It's specific on which parcel it can be placed on. It's specific as to what kind of development you can have. So aside from that, really, the only other zoning district that we have that allows for multifamily housing is the PD zone. So that's really, I think, what I can say on this. I think in a manner of controlling traffic, this is not a good provision. In a manner of controlling multifamily housing, I don't know that that's appropriate for a provision to control a development style, I guess. And,
Very good.
That concludes my report, unless you have other questions.
Thank you, Renata. I'm going to go to the commissioners now to see if they have any questions for Renata or the applicant. Is there any questions from the commissioners? If there's no questions from the commissioners, without objection, I will go to the public participation, public hearing. Is there anybody in favor of this application? Please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Anybody wishing to speak in favor? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Do you have anybody, Eric?
I do not see anyone with their hand raised. We have one now. We got a couple now. Mr. Matt Rossi, would you like to speak?
Go right ahead.
Hello, Matthew Rossi, 17 Franklin Circle. I am calling in today to vote against the changing of the rules. From what I just heard from the town planner, all of her reasonings for why this was put into it was all assumption. She's assuming, she has no concrete with it. I also would like to have it put on public record that both Attorney Sweeney and Mr. Bongiovanni themselves were involved in the Culver Street Apartments, which we were at for multiple meetings for many hours, changing the residential zone to a PD zone. I think that this amendment is to benefit that project without looking at the long-term effects. There are a large number of other properties that this could eventually down the way affect. I think relying only on special permits could possibly create the wild rest of development in PD zones. And in particular, this amendment really should hold, because if a property touches two streets, okay, the property touches two streets that do meet this criteria, they have ample opportunities to build their properties within the regulations, even with 3.19.2.b.1. They have to build within the regulations, design their land within the regulations. And I don't think the removing of this is a good idea. Again, this is all assumption on why it was put in. There is no concrete evidence of why. And I am strongly against changing this amendment. I clearly understand it, and I'm not in the zoning area. I understand it. I've read it. It makes complete sense to me. And again, I'm fully against the changing of this amendment. I think it should stay exactly the way that it is written. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Eric?
Igor Puchenikov. Can unmute
Hello?
yourself?
Yes, I'm unmuted. This is
Yes,
Igor
you are.
Bolchenkov.
Your
Go ahead,
address.
sir.
Thank you. This is Igor Bolchenkov with 20 Cobblestone Court, Newington. I completely agree with the previous speaker who said that the whole application is driven primarily by the previous zone change that clearly benefits this development. There was, in the public hearing for the previous zone change, was done with multiple irregularities, to say the least, of this zoning commission and the town council. And I, as a not native speaker, understand what direct access means. And if Mr. Bongiovanni does not, I'd be happy to explain it to him what direct access means. And again, so I'm completely against this proposed change. If the zoning commission and the town council wishes to clarify what that means, they should do it. But striking the whole paragraph is clearly a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Next, Anthony Yoder. You can unmute yourself.
Okay. So thank you for your time. My name is Anthony Yoder. I own and reside at 54 Shady Hill Lane. I had spoken at the previous meeting in opposition to the rezoning of the Culver Street parcel, and I was disappointed by the outcome of the decision, but I hope that the commissioners will enter the decision tonight with an open mind regarding the long-term effects of the proposed text amendment outlined in Petition 5421. It is of significant interest that Mr. Bongiovanni made this application as a private citizen and not on behalf of his architectural firm, and maintains that this is in the general interest of the community and not related to any particular development. I find this peculiar since as recently as last month, his firm was advocating for changes pertinent to the proposed development on Culver Street, in which he and his firm certainly have a vested financial interest, and thus also in the amendment. The application of one citizen with a personal interest in this project cannot outweigh those of the numerous residents of the area who are concerned. The Commission is obligated to listen to and understand the concerns of affected citizens as they consider the change, and should be under no illusion that the sole intent of the application is concern for the vague language of the regulation as stated by Mr. Sweeney, who is a land use attorney retained for the purpose of this approval. As currently stated in regulation, residential buildings in a PD zone cannot be approved without direct access to the turnpike or public street which directly connects to it. While I agree with Mr. Bongiovanni and Mr. Sweeney that the term direct access is not well defined, I would like to suggest that the Commission take this opportunity to affirm that it is defined by an entrance directly on the turnpike or street which directly intersects it. Given the concern regarding the ambiguity and clarity of this, perhaps it should be further defined that this provision also pertains to the PD zone adjacent to the turnpike, since it appears there are in fact other zones to which this does not apply due to past amendments or waivers. What other reason would there be intended other than to preserve the buffer protecting the residential characteristics of the area and the safety inherent in controlling the traffic in areas adjacent to the area already encroached by the recent zoning change from residential to PD. Many of the concerns which have been voiced are regarding the irreversible impact this development will have on our residential neighborhood. While the owners have stated they have the right to develop their land as they please, we accept this may be true. And certainly, while we prefer not to have a large residential dwelling, which it could in theory change to other commercial development, we too have the right to not have irreparable damage this would cause and the right to continue the quality of life we've enjoyed to date. The commission must consider this when weighing this decision, considering the opinions of all who have submitted or given testimony. Approving this change may significantly increase the number of areas which would potentially be open to this type of indirect access, whether by zoning change or set precedent. There's no question that opening Newington to this type of development would substantially change the quality of life which brought many of us here, and specifically to this residential neighborhood. You've heard concerns regarding safety along Culver Street, and while a traffic study done during the pandemic was estimated to have undercounted the traffic by 20%, the effect of adding additional traffic is well beyond this. Much of the focus was on speed, and this was brushed off as a law enforcement issue based on DOT studies. The intersections along the road are cumbersome and hard to navigate, particularly at Deming Street and Culver Road, where the three-way intersection causes a constant hazard, and there is no reasonable expectation that more cars will make it any easier. Accessing Deming Road directly would mitigate much of this. The safety is not limited to street traffic, but also to pedestrian traffic. As you've heard numerous times, the sidewalk is not continuous past Apple Hill, and further is on the other side of the road opposite to the proposed development, leaving residents to either walk in the street or cross it numerous times to reach the existing sidewalk. By my understanding, part of the intent of this project was to access existing businesses and would note that there's no sidewalk along Deming Street in the area, which again would pose a safety hazard to drivers and pedestrians. I truly appreciate your time and ask you that you carefully consider the short and long-term ramifications this language change would pose. Property owners certainly have a right to develop their land, but not at the expense of the adjacent neighborhoods. There are other options to access either Deming Road or Casella Road, and while this may not be as aesthetically pleasing or financially rewarding to the developer, this does not negate them as options. I appreciate your open consideration of these comments and ask that you preserve the existing section and deny petition 5421. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Catherine Carl, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Catherine Carl, 54 Cobblestone Court. I am opposed to petition 5421. Deleting 319 to B1 would add at least 45 streets in Newington that could potentially be the gateways to larger residential developments in PD zones. There are a lot of low-density neighborhoods that could be killed by high-density housing. Section 319 to B1 was purposely and wisely devised to protect residential neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
I see no one on the attendee side, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Believe it or not.
I will ask the applicant if he'd like to respond to anything.
Very briefly, Mr.
I believe Renata was speaking.
I'm sorry.
Chairman, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Renata.
apologize, Mr. Chair, before you turn to the applicant, our office received a couple of emails, and I was wondering if you wanted Eric and I to read these into record.
Yes, please. I'm sorry, I forgot about those. Yes, let's read those into the minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so Eric, would you mind starting with first two, and I'll read the last two, please.
Okay. The first item was received from Mohammed Alarami at 14 Coachman Lane, Newington, Connecticut. Renata Bertotti, Town Planner, Town of Newington. Dear Ms. Bertotti, as a resident of the town and as a civil engineer, I have concerns regarding petition 54-21 for the following reasons. I would like this email to be read into the record when the petition is discussed. The November 8th, 2021 traffic study was not conducted for a full week. See page 4 in November 10th, 2021 TPZ minutes. The study shows that the level of service, LOS, had fallen to LOSC, page 4, and in the November 10th, 2021 minutes, compared to July 2nd, 2021 traffic study, which was LOSB, page 25, in the October 13th, 2021. LOS is used to describe the quality of traffic and operating conditions of a roadway based on factors such as speed, travel time, maneuverability, delay, and safety, where LOSA is best and LOSF is worse. Without a full study, it will be hard to determine the full effect of the road on the roadway. In addition, as I mentioned, in the November 10th, 2021 TPZ meeting, the automated traffic devices at Culver Street were set close to Cortland Way, Apple Hill, which doesn't take into account Cambridge Drive and the Cambridge Complex entrance on Culver Street. This may have eliminated any Cambridge Complex traffic approaching Culver Street and Deming Street, ultimately resulting in less volume than reality. The automated traffic devices should have been placed between Cambridge Drive and Deming Street. In the November 10th, 2021 TPZ meeting, I asked that the developer's engineer took into consideration the geometry of the roadway when he calculated the site distance of 480 feet, page 5 on the November 10th, 2021. As you know, the proposed entrance at Culver Street does not meet the regulations set for a special permit, section 3.19.2 B1, which states, no site shall be approved unless it has direct access to the Berlin Turnpike or to a public street which directly connects to Berlin Turnpike. Culver Street does not. The question was not answered. There are many ways to achieve an access through a wetland without interfering with it, but it would require many permits and additional construction. I believe the town should not compromise the regulation in favor of this petition to save time and money for the developer. But if the town decides to move forward with this petition, I recommend that the town hire a third party to perform a full traffic study before making any decisions. Thanks and happy holidays, Mohammed Al-Rami, PE. The next letter received was from Philip J. Kostick at 41 Littlebrook Drive in Newington, January 10th, 2022. To the Newington TPZ, Newington Town Council, Newington Town Manager, and Newington Town Planner. I've been a resident in the town of Newington for the past 44 years. I oppose petition 5421, zoning text amendment, section 3.19.2 B1, to delete the requirement that residential developments in the PD zone be located on sites with direct access to the Berlin Turnpike or streets that directly connect to the Berlin Turnpike. When this whole process regarding the Culver Street apartment started, the residents became involved. I had some optimism that our voices would be heard, but I also had my doubts. After all of their expert testimony from the conservationists, civil engineers, attorneys, including data that was presented in favor of the proposal, the real expert testimony from the neighborhood residents has been ignored. Our participation in the virtual TPZ hearings, our emails and letters were labeled as anecdotal. This is an insult to those in opposition to the proposed development. We are not scientists, engineers, or attorneys, but we are the real experts because we live in the town and neighborhoods, and we see how the proposed changes will impact our neighborhood. As we all know, change in population density, traffic load, crime, and demand for services is taking place every day. We are only trying to protect our town, our rights, and quality of life as Newington residents and taxpayers. There are alternatives to this plan to increase tax revenues and providing adequate and affordable housing that should be studied. How about a 55+ community with single-story living for our aging town residents? How about a different location? How about a scaled-back project with access to Costello Road? When will politicians and government officials on the federal, state, and local levels start representing the people that they are supposed to represent? I guess when you develop a plan and the existing policy and regulations do not satisfy your objective, you can just ignore people's rights and concerns and change the rules to get your way. A simple majority of 7 TPZ commissioners determines the outcome of zoning application changes. Where are the checks and balances in this process? Where is the accountability? I am surprised by the autocracy displayed by the town and Newington TPZ. By approving these zoning changes, you are setting a dangerous precedent for future zoning proposals and requests. This amendment can potentially and forever change the footprint of the town of Newington. By your approval, these zoning changes, you are performing a disservice to the town of Newington and its residents. I request that this email be read into the official record of this application.
All right, and I will read the next two. So this one is from Yelena Kirian of 41 Cambridge Drive in Newington, signed by Yelena Kirian and John Dooley. Jack Dooley, actually, of 17 Cambridge Drive. We, Yelena Kirian and John Dooley, residents of Cambridge Arms, oppose petition number 5421 filed by Mr. Bongiovanni. Section 3.19.2.b.1 should be preserved, and the Town Planning and Zoning Commission should deny petition number 54-21. We want this letter be added to the record. Please note, by the nature of his business, Mr. Bongiovanni is and will be monetarily compensated for each petition he files. Right now, his actions create disturbance in our neighborhood, and we, regular residents, have to be constantly alert and use our resources to battle Mr. Bongiovanni's ideas. And so do you, members of TPC. The change in zoning text is clearly weighted towards developers and not the citizens of Newington or residents anywhere in town who live on Culver Street or similar streets I listed below. Section 3.19.2.b.1 was purposely and wisely devised to protect residential neighborhoods, and it is doing its job. The zoning changes in zoning text will affect Fenn Road, Myra Cohen Way, Alumni Road, Maple Hill Avenue, West Hill Road, Surrey Drive, Hartford Avenue, North Mountain Road, Market Square, Lowry Place, Constance Lee Drive, Hopkins Drive, Lewis Street, Stanwell Road, Pebble Drive, Gloucester Court, Willard Avenue, Coronado Drive, Revere Drive, Church Street, Kelsey Street, Orchard Avenue, Foster Street, Stonehenge Drive, Occhialini Court, Tremont Street, Church Terrace, Bridle Path, Meadow Street, Willow Line, or Willow Lane, Progress Circle, Rockwell Road, Holland Drive, Maselli Road, Horizon Hill Road, Webster Court, Adam Drive, Costello Place, Cobblestone Court, Culver Street, Deming Farm Drive, Waverly Drive, Griswold Hills Drive, Woods Edge Drive, and Crown Ridge. Regards, Yelena Kirian and John Dole. And the last one is from Mary McSpadden. This one is dated January 12, 2022. I am opposed to petition number 5421, and I would like this email read into record at the January 12, 2022 public hearing. The sole petitioner, Alan Bongiovanni, appears to be motivated by a huge monetary gain via his business, Bongiovanni Group Inc., as agent for AR Building. By deleting section 3.19.2.b.1, PD zone land developers would not be required to have direct access to Berlin Turnpike or to public street which directly connects to Berlin Turnpike. Many streets could potentially be the gateways to large residential developments in PD zones, including Fenn Road, Myra Cohen Way, Alumni Road, Maple Hill Avenue, West Hill Road, Surrey Drive, Hartford Avenue, North Mountain Road, Market Square, Lovely Place, Constance Lee Drive, Hopkins Drive, Lewis Street, Stanwell Road, Pebble Drive, Gloucester Court, Willard Avenue, Coronado Drive, Revere Drive, Church Street, Kelsey Street, Orchard Avenue, Foster Street, Stonehenge Drive, Occhialini Court, Tremont Street, Church Terrace, Bridle Path, Meadow Street, Willow Lane, Progress Circle, Rockwell Road, and Holland Drive, to name a portion. This is a lot of low-density neighborhoods that could be adversely affected by high-density housing. Large residential and commercial development should conform to the existing PD requirements. Use of the Berlin Turnpike for traffic control was a well-thought-out, good decision by previous town planners. The neighborhoods need to be protected from commercial traffic. Please protect our neighborhoods and deny the petition. The citizens and homeowners have invested their precious resources and time living in this very nice community. Respectfully, Mary McSpadden, 246 Candlewood Drive. So those are the emails we received. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Renata. And the applicant has an opportunity to rebut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to be very brief. I know you have a number of other items on your agenda. First and foremost, any testimony that you've heard tonight about a specific site or a specific project is inappropriate. It's not appropriate for a hearing on a zoning text amendment. You must make your decision based on the record, but you cannot consider many of the comments regarding any specific project or a specific site. The second thing I want to say is every resident, every property owner in this town has a right to come before the board and seek changes, whether it's Mr. Bongiovanni or if it's one of the neighbors in the Culver Street neighborhood. You are not obligated to comply with the regulations as written. You always have, it's the nature of zoning, have the ability to come and ask for changes to the regulation. And certainly Mr. Bongiovanni has that right, and he's exercising it here tonight. I do want to comment on Mr. Yoder. I thought, his presentation was very well made. I was very happy to hear Mr. Yoder actually agree with us that the language of the provision that we're seeking to delete is vague. It's not well defined. But I think the bottom line is the issue is that the effect of this has no practical, useful purpose that supports the policies and goals of the plan of development. It's not an issue of redefining this condition. The condition is not a good condition to have in general because it puts an unreasonable and unnecessary restriction on residential development. Remember, at the end of the day, residential development in the PD zone is still subject to special permit. You have the discretion as a commission to review every application for residential development on a case-by-case basis. And part of that review by your own regulations requires you to look at traffic. So if there is a location, and I know Mr. Rossi talked about the Wild West in PD zones, and I think Ms. Carl talked about the concern of a gateway to bad development decisions. The commission is always the gatekeeper in the special permit process, and traffic is one of the things in your regulations and my statutes that you can consider whether a site is appropriate or not. You don't need an arbitrary restriction like the provision we're seeking to delete. I would, third item I just wanted to touch on is I would absolutely reject the argument that this provision is somehow intended to buffer residential neighborhoods, because it's not. And I think it's really important to look at the provision. Nothing in that provision restricts a developer from providing a vehicular or other type of direct access way that's physically built from a street that isn't on the Berlin Turnpike or an attaching street. All it says is, arguably, is that you have to have direct access to those streets. It doesn't mean that's your sole access or even your primary access. So the idea that somehow this regulation is to create a buffer to neighborhoods is absolutely incorrect. It doesn't do that. It doesn't do that no matter how you interpret the regulation. You can have access points, you can have traffic going through residential neighborhoods to single-family residential neighborhoods to access multifamily projects in PD zones. So that's just not what the provision does. And I think that's important to recognize and get on the record. Again, my last comment is, you have an obligation to look at your regulations and make sure they make sense. This provision doesn't make any sense. This is an opportunity to clean that up and rely on the discretion that you already have in your special permit criteria to, on a case-by-case basis, evaluate residential building development in the PD zone. And that's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to exercise that discretion. I'm sure you're going to have projects that come in the next few months, in the next few years, that will take advantage of it. And you'll be able to look at a whole variety of things in those projects, including traffic. But you'll be able to do that on a case-by-case basis. You'll be able to do that intelligently. It'll be the applicant's obligation to show and to prove to you that they have dealt with traffic appropriately. But I think it's unfair and unreasonable and certainly counter to your efforts to try to diversify and grow housing stock in this community to have these arbitrary barriers. And so that's why we have submitted this application tonight to delete this provision in its entirety. I hope I've answered all of your questions tonight. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them, but we would ask that you close the hearing this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Attorney Sweeney. All right, and the public that is opposing has a rebuttal. If anybody has anything else they'd like to add.
I see no one at the moment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. I'll go to the commissioners now and see if you'd like to, what you'd like to do on this. You'd like to close this petition? Commissioners' comments? Or,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to close the public hearing and just move it to old business for discussion.
okay, very good. I have a motion from Commissioner Woods to close this petition and move it to old business for discussion. Is there a second?
I second that.
And that's seconded by Vice Chairman Claffey. Any comments or questions? Noreen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Truly. Commissioner Claffey,
Yes.
Commissioner Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Haggerty,
Yes.
Commissioner Havens. Commissioner Havens,
Yes.
okay. Commissioner Linares,
Yes.
Commissioner Woods,
Yes.
Chairman Payne,
Yes,
unanimous.
you're unanimous. Thank you very much, Noreen.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Okay, the next thing on the agenda, if I could have Vice Chairman Claffey read petition 50-21.
Petition 50-21 zoning text amendment section 6.16 to add medical marijuana dispensary facilities and production facilities, adult use cannabis cultivator and micro cultivator to the PD zone, and to add adult use cannabis retailer, hybrid retailer, medical marijuana dispensary facilities to the PD and B zone. Applicant in contact Newington TPZ.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to Renata for
Yes,
presentation.
Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Chair. So last year in October of 2021, we adopted a regulation amendment to allow to add to our existing regulations, which at the time of that adoption allowed medical marijuana dispensaries and medical marijuana production facilities. In a couple of zoning districts, we also added to those same zoning districts the newly passed newly passed uses that consisted of cultivators, micro cultivators, hybrid retailers, and retailers of recreational cannabis. And just big picture, the micro cultivator is essentially cultivator, grower, and propagator of cannabis plants. It's a facility that is anywhere between 2,000 square feet and 10,000 square feet, but it's smaller than 10,000 square feet in size. The cultivator is the same kind of facility, except that it has to be minimum 15,000 square feet in an area. The hybrid retail is a retail of cannabis, which must include a pharmacy or licensed pharmacists. And then the cannabis retail for recreational cannabis does not necessarily have to include the on-site pharmacist or pharmacist, period. So as we adopted, our regulations in October, we allowed these zones, we allowed this use to business turnpike zone for the sales, and we allowed cultivation in industrial zone. And we had a discussion about perhaps considering some additional zoning districts that perhaps could be potentially suitable for these kind of uses. In particular, there was some discussion about looking into a PD zone and perhaps looking into business zone. In my memo, as you can see, first of all, I did amend the zoning regulation to allow the proposed uses. So now you have essentially production, micro cultivation, and cultivation as potentially, if the regulation is adopted, allowed use also in the planned development zone, as well as recreational retail and hybrid retail, as if the regulation passes, as a use that would be allowed in a PD zone and a business zone. Eric, if you can display our zoning map, I would appreciate it. So I raised a couple of things for you to consider. I think I visited, as the commission may remember from the October discussion, with the chairman of the planning commission and the fire marshal, one of the operating production facilities in the state. And that was really a state-of-the-art production facility. You from outside would not know that that's what this business did. It was in the industrial area, it was factory on the outside, and it looked like a factory, it smelled like a factory. You would not, it did not really give anything that would give away that this was a production facility. However, this was one of these production facilities that was already designed to kind of higher sophisticated level. This was, I don't remember what was the square footage of the property, but it was pretty large. It was above the threshold of what cultivator size would have been. So this would probably converted to, a cultivator use would be of a cultivator size style of use. Now, smaller uses, micro cultivators, could actually take place in smaller buildings, which could be good, but also I don't know that investment, because we had at length discussion with the property owner of that facility about what kind of investment was needed to create a facility like that. And I thought that investment that went into air filtration and security of that facility was so high that I don't know that the smaller places would really justify such a high investment. So that, to me, we can allow it in a PD zone, but I don't know how realistic it is that we would really get one of these in there. Another thing that, I actually bring this up in my memo is that, we should think, and I personally don't really have strong feelings about it, but the downtown is somewhat of, emotional matter, at least to me, and I guarantee it's to many people. if this, because this is zone PD, is this a good location for a use like that? You know, we should probably think about, if we adopt it, is this use appropriate? If it's not appropriate, then how do we make sure that in this specific location, somebody cannot come in and do one of these uses? The other thing that I also brought up in my memo was the separation requirements. So with separation requirements in particular, I was thinking, you know, I was looking on the map, and the business zones are kind of in the middle of residential neighborhoods. You can have vape stores in retail stores in the middle of residential neighborhoods. And I don't think there are many problems with that, or people should have problems with that. So we just need to kind of understand, okay, if we can have this kind of a store, can we then just be okay with having a recreational cannabis retail in there? Another thing to maybe think about is proximity to schools. We have a business zone near both middle school and high school that's within the proximity that's, you know, at least we should talk about it. So those are kind of conversation topics that I would like you as the commission to talk about a little bit, and then I'm sure you will have your own questions and comments as well. Eric, if you don't mind also bringing just the revised text so that the commission can see exactly what.
Yep, just a minute.
Thank you. And by the way, just before I stop talking, the retailers and micro cultivators are highly regulated by the state, at least for the time being. So for the community of our size, we can have no more than 2 retailers and no more than 2 micro cultivators. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. Those are the only 2 that are regulated though. So the hybrid is not regulated by numbers by the state. They are regulated, however, by the nature of themselves, because they have to include a dispensary in them because they have to have that pharmaceutical part. So all of these uses, should I say, are highly regulated by also numbers of how many a community can possibly have. And those are pretty low.
Anything else, Renata?
No, I do not have anything else to add. I'm just
Okay.
waiting for questions now.
Okay, let's go to the commissioners. Have any questions? I must say that was a production facility that we visited, correct, Renata?
Yeah,
It was,
yes, that was the medical.
it was a very large building. Had to be over 50,000 square feet there. And it was very interesting. Is there any questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay, if there's.
Anthony has his hand up.
Yep. Commissioner Claffey, go ahead.
I guess my question, Renata, goes back to in your presentation, you brought up an area, a business zone that was wrapped in residential. And it was using as an example, it was over by Willard Avenue, on Willard Avenue. I think it was a great example because it had residential completely around it, but then it also has commercial down the street and has a school, has a daycare center now down the street. And I think I brought this up many months ago because, I look at this type facility, if it's a retailer selling, is no different than tobacco or liquor, which is regulated by the state, just like this. And I think I brought it up, if I do recall, that we were trying to only allow these places to go to certain parts of the town. And that's where I thought it was kind of wrong, because you kind of have to open it up to where it currently could possibly fit if it's so regulated, which it is, like cigarettes and liquor. I'm more concerned on that end than the actual, if a person wanted to come in here and put in that 50, 60,000 square foot grow room, I guess is a better word to say, to cultivate it, I think that's where you don't see it as much as if you saw it as the dispensary style business store. So I think it needs to be discussed, because I think it falls, as I said, in October and even previous to that, it falls into that like 7-Eleven complex on Willard Avenue, because it's so close to everything. Currently we allow it. There's a liquor store, excuse me, let me rephrase that. Currently we allow like a liquor store in that type facility wrapped with residential around it. So, that's where I was going with why I think it should be opened up more to the whole community. And I think you've presented it in a way that now kind of directs us to where these facilities could be better targeted. But I don't want to shun away from the business side of this as the actual sale point that might come out of it at a later date through the state regulations. So I don't know how that plays into your presentation, but I don't think we should pigeonhole these locations. I think if you do that, you're just, they're already regulated. You can only have so many sellers. You can have only so many facilities in a town. So you might as well open it up to wherever they can put these facilities, if so they choose to come to Newington.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chairman Claffey. Is there any other comments from commissioners? Questions for Renata? Or comments? If there's no objection, go ahead, Renata.
If I may just add one comment. To me, frankly, it seems that adding retail and hybrid retail to PD zone is somewhat of a safe venture. That is a retail commercial type of a zoning district. I think perhaps that would be the best potential fit. I don't know that we have to even consider micro cultivators and cultivators at this point. It is up to you whether you want to do that or not. This is one of those things when we can always revisit also regulations as the need arises, like later on. So if we have a request later, we can revisit once we have some experience with this. But with these kind of things, I feel that, we can go sort of baby steps forward with this, because we're really not getting, except for some interest for a retail along Berlin Turnpike, we haven't heard other requests.
Okay, thank you, Renata. Is there any other questions or comments for Renata from the commissioners? Commissioner Linares, go right ahead.
I just wanted to chime in and say that I agree with the planner saying that the going forward with this should be treated with some baby steps and some care, some conservative approach to try to do what's best for the town. But yet having that vision and moving forward with something like this, I know it's a sensitive matter and it's a new matter for a lot of towns, and especially ours. So I think that's a good way of approaching it, and I'm fully behind that approach. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Linares. Commissioner Claffey.
I just had a question to other fellow members that may have been on prior to me when the vape stores that became very popular. I remember Newington didn't have any, and then all of a sudden I remember there's 2 or 3 or 4, and now there's not too many. I think I can remember 2 that are still maybe operational. So was this a big issue? Like vape was all new, like come in, get your flavor. I mean, I don't even know enough about vape. But was this an issue years ago when the vaping became, that was like the new way to, get rid of cigarettes? We'll go to vape, and now we're into marijuana. But does anyone recall a big push to need to change any regulations for vape stores? I think it always fell under the tobacco side, but I mean, any other commissioners remember that? I personally don't. And that's the only thing I can kind of guide of, like, I don't think there's a huge need in Newington, but again, I don't want to, say no to it. If a change needs to be made, a change needs to be made.
Renata?
So I think the only thing that I can volunteer as information here is that this is different than vape retail and retail in general by the fact that the state sorts of demands that communities ask for special permits on these kind of uses, because the state wants to keep the record on these. It's a licensure kind of a product. It is the most akin to liquor sales. It's really not as tobacco and vape.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. Any other questions? We'll go to public. If there's anybody from the public that would like to speak in favor of this petition 50-21, anybody wishing to speak in favor? Eric?
Yes, we have one individual. Reno, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners, Planner. My name is Reno Ferrarisi. I am a founder of CT Pharma, a medical marijuana production facility here in Rocky Hill. Actually, ours is the site that was visited a couple months ago. We're actually 216,000 square feet of production space. We were originally located in Portland and moved here to Rocky Hill in October of 2020. I've been a senior manager and an operator in the Connecticut cannabis industry for about 8 years now. And I want to voice my support to add the adult use cannabis retailer business to the planned development zone. Please know that the legal cannabis industry in Connecticut is highly regulated, as was discussed tonight. It's regulated as a consumer packaged good, as a CPG. There is product testing. There is required site security. It actually is more regulated than a liquor store because there is seat to sale tracking. So the state knows how many units are located at each of the businesses on a daily basis, how many of those units get sold, et cetera. They track right down to how many pounds of product, how many plants we have in the building. So it's a very secure operation. The program today serves around 50,000 patients and it's growing weekly, but we expect the adult use cannabis industry will serve additional customers, and it will still remain under the purview of the Department of Consumer Protection, who administers the program today, that consists of 18 dispensaries and 4 production facilities. And I can tell you that it is bar none the best program in the nation because of its security, the purity of the products, the consistency of the dosing, and really the administration by the DCP. And that'll continue in the rec business. And our company, which is Verano, it owns and operates a production facility here in Rocky Hill, and we have 2 dispensaries, one in Meriden and one in Waterbury. It is our hope to open a dispensary in Newington in the PD zone. I just want to say that I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak here tonight, and I want to recognize the town of Newington's efforts to allow this business type in the planned development zone. And with that, I want to express my support to add the adult use cannabis dispensaries to the PD zone, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Please raise your hand.
See no one else at the moment, Chairman.
Anybody wishing to speak in opposition?
Have, I believe it's Rose Lyons, phone ending in 070. You can unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. I was just curious, I'm reading an article that was written in 2013 about the draft rules that you had proposed back then, and it said the draft rules would confine medical marijuana dispensaries to industrial and public land zones. It's coming from the Hartford Current, so I'm just guessing maybe they were misquoted with the public land zones. Is public land zones a PD area, or I'm just curious. I'm not in favor or against. I'm neutral. I'm not at the point where I'm going to be hopefully having to get medical marijuana. You never know. At some point in time in my life, I may. But I'm just curious about the zoning. Was public land once known as, or now known as PD? I'm not familiar with the zoning.
No, they're two separate zones.
They're two separate zones. Okay, so the PD, that's fine. I just hope that I'm not the only one watching tonight, because I was the only one at the workshops back in 2013. And as seems to happen in this town a lot, once the regulations are put in place, then people start complaining. So I hope that maybe you keep it open for one more public hearing. And if something comes up that someone wants to speak about at the next public hearing, that they have the opportunity to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition? Or
No
anybody?
other public has raised their hand, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I'll turn it to the commissioners. What is your pleasure on petition 50-21?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'll actually follow Ms. Lyons' lead and say we leave it open because this is possibly a controversial subject. Let's leave it open one more meeting, and then we can close it and deliberate on it and see if we want to do it. And plus, it'll give us some time to think about it a little bit more.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have a motion then from Commissioner Woods to leave petition 50-21 open. Do I have a second on that?
Second from Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox. We have a second. Any comments? Noreen, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Commissioner Claffey,
Yes.
Commissioner Fox,
Aye.
Commissioner Haggerty,
Yes.
Commissioner Havens,
Yes.
Commissioner Linares,
Yes.
Commissioner Woods,
Yes.
Chairman Payne,
Yes.
unanimous.
Very good. Thank you, Noreen.
You're welcome.
All right, so the next thing on our agenda is approval of minutes. We have minutes, the revised minutes for 11/10/21. I'll entertain, is there any corrections on that? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Fox. Do I have a second?
Seconded by Haggerty.
Commissioner Haggerty seconds. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes for 11/10/21 have been voted on unanimously. We have also minutes of 12/8/21 special meeting. Renata, can we group these together?
Yes, I believe you can.
Okay, and we also have minutes of 12/8/2021 regular meeting. I'll entertain a motion for approval of those.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Fox. Do I have a second?
Seconded by Haggerty.
Commissioner Haggerty, second. Any comments? Any corrections? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next thing on the agenda is item B. That's Connecticut Center for Latino Progress will introduce their upcoming walk, audit, and workshop to explore the transit-oriented opportunities at Newington Junction. Is the someone go right ahead?
Hi, everybody. That would be me.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak before the commission and the folks in Newington. Just quickly, my name is Pete Harrison, and I'm the Senior Policy Fellow at Desegregate Connecticut. For those of you that aren't familiar with us, we are a coalition of nonprofits and community groups, about 80 across the state, that is committed to building a more equitable and sustainable Connecticut through smart land use development. One of our priorities at the local level, across the state, and at the state level this coming year is transit-oriented communities, which is a concept that basically allows more development, particularly home development and mixed-use development around our transit stations, be it a rail line or a rapid bus line. We have been lucky enough to get a grant from the Hartford Foundation of Public Giving to do a study in the greater Hartford area of opportunities for TRCs around either the Hartford line or CT Fast Track. We're happy to be partnering with the Center for Latino Progress, which is a Hartford-based group that does a number of transit and micro mobility work. And we have decided on doing two towns, one in Berlin at the Hartford station there, and then also at the Newington Junction Fast Track station. We think there are a lot of really great opportunities through some, fairly benign small scale zoning reforms to encourage more affordable and accessible housing. So I just wanted to come on tonight and formally invite everyone on the Planning and Zoning Commission, anyone in the audience. We've started outreach for folks to attend a walk audit of the Junction Station on February 16th, which is a Wednesday next month from 1 to 3 p.m. And the goal of that event will be having a group of community residents and any officials and any folks that would like to participate to meet at Newington Junction Station and walk around kind of in a half-mile radius to explore what the sort of built environment is in the area there, what potential opportunities for undeveloped land for multifamily housing, where are areas that are environmentally or historically sensitive that we wouldn't want to build there, and to give residents an idea of what transit-oriented communities would look like, to encourage the promotion of that concept at the town level and the state level, and also, frankly, to assuage some concerns whether folks have about, overdevelopment or what it would look like. This is very much a human scale endeavor, so we think doing these kinds of walk audits, literally just kind of walking around the immediate vicinity of the district, or I'm sorry, of the station, is really beneficial to answer some of those questions. So I'm just coming on tonight to sort of talk about it very quickly, to invite folks to attend. I have a couple of sort of follow-up pieces of information for our Desegregate Connecticut website, which has some information of our TOC report on the state and kind of what our goals look like. Also a sign-up sheet for folks that are interested in potentially attending. It is obviously outside on February, so it might be a bit cold. We'll play it by ear and Omicron stuff, but we're assuming hopefully by then it'll be safe to sort of congregate outside. So I also wanted to come on and sort of answer any questions from folks on the commission, any folks in the audience that maybe lives in the area or otherwise. But overall, we're very excited about promoting TOCs across the state and starting in Greater Hartford and in Newington specifically. We're really looking forward to having some folks come out and participate and give their 2 cents and ask some questions. And then after that, on March 2nd, March 9th, we will have a follow-up virtual workshop to go over those questions and observations and, offer some potential next steps.
Very good. Where would you be meeting on February 16th exactly, just so the commissioners know? There's the train station on one side or lack of, or the bus area on the other side. Have you picked a point?
The idea would be folks can park in the station. I believe there's a Dunkin' Donuts there, depending on the size of folks. But the idea will be to meet at the station.
Okay.
We'll have folks there ready to meet folks.
Okay. Very good. And Renata, if you could send out a reminder to everybody, I think this could be very valuable to the commission. And also hook us up on March 9th for what's happening with the review. I'll turn it over now to the other commissioners in case they have any questions for you, Peter.
Yeah, appreciate that. And happy to work with the planning department if that's what the commission wishes. We're happy to do that.
Thank you. Is there any additional questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Woods, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Peter, if you don't mind, how long do you think this study will take, and what is the outcome that you're looking for? Will you produce plans on how we can develop this area? Like just a rough draft, or do you not go into that kind of detail?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I guess the short answer is we're not going to get into super detailed level for Newington. The idea is kind of twofold. One is to give just kind of public education on what the concept of transit-oriented communities are, both for folks in Newington and kind of across the state. Our specific objective with Newington Junction will be to have some meaningful impact for efforts, if the town is considering these options. Part of what attracted us to Newington Junction is this question of, is the Hartford line going to have a station there? Based on our research, we potentially think that makes a lot of sense. So that might be something we would, try to explore earlier or further beyond the workshop. But the deliverable we'll have specifically will be kind of a sort of formal qualitative review of participants of the walk audit, which maybe will result in some recommendations, both for the commission to consider and to sort of support a TOC development agenda at the town level. We will also hopefully, between the Newington project and the Berlin project, we'll have what we're going to call a community toolkit to sort of replicate this concept of the walk audits around, the 62 odd stations in the state, for community groups and for commissions to be able to kind of go around their stations to see what's potentially, how a TOC could work there. So primarily it'll be kind of an informal review for Newington Junction that hopefully we can work with the planning department and the commission on. Love to keep a dialogue going beyond that. And then this community toolkit will be the sort of deliverable that we can hopefully replicate beyond.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other? No, you're welcome. Any other questions from commissioners? Renata, go right ahead.
Peter, just one question. One of the things that I understood when we spoke on Friday was that you were also looking for help from this meeting to get you some additional, some way to notify some other residents in the area, some other elected and appointed members. So can you talk to the commission a little bit about that so that we know a little bit better how to?
Yeah, appreciate the follow up there. Yeah, I mean, we're really excited to have as many folks that can come and participate. We have, I think, already reached out to elected officials in town and the state reps as well. I don't know if we have a confirmation of folks yet. I think we've got a couple of people signed up already. One of the things that we're also doing with some outreach is, some local businesses in the area, community groups, faith groups. The Newington Housing Authority, of course, is right across the street. We'd love to have a representative there as well. And particularly for folks kind of up on the hill there, that live in the neighborhood. We'd love to have community participation, even if it's folks that have shown some concern about what development would look like. I think that's a great audience for us to really show the benefits of what TOCs are and demystify some of maybe think it's going to turn into Manhattan or something around Newington Junction. So if there are folks that, commissioners know that you think would be someone we should reach out to and invite, we'd love to do that. I can follow up with you, Renata, about that as well, but would love a blanket invitation for anybody that you think might be a really good stakeholder to include in the process, with an understanding, of course, that Wednesday midday can be tricky for folks. So even if people can't make the walk audit itself, if they can attend the virtual workshop in a couple weeks after, we really hope that too. So really 2 opportunities to participate that we'd love to get the word out to anybody in Newington that you think would be worthy of getting this in front of.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any other questions from the town planner or any commissioners? Very good. Thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, again, really appreciate the opportunity. Looking forward to working with some folks on the commission and the town. And it's just such a great opportunity. Newington Junction has a lot of assets in it, and the town's doing a lot of great stuff. So we're really looking forward to it. So I'll follow up with a couple of links in the sign up stuff and hope to see you all there on the 16th.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Stay safe.
Yep. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is old business. And I'll ask if one of the commissioners could read the first petition 53-21.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Petition 53-21, special permit section 3.11.14 to allow apartments on the second floor in a business building at 566 New Britain Avenue. Applicant and contact Wislaw S. Kaczynski, owner Wislaw S. and Margozata Kaczynski. Move to approve the above referenced petition 53-21 to allow apartments on the second floor in a business building in the B zone. Reason for the approval: the proposed application meets the special permit criteria as in section 5.2 of the Newington zoning regulations.
And there was some conditions, Renata? Or you had recommended? I think there was some conditions that Renata recommended. I don't know.
Yes, we did include several conditions in the staff memo. Let me just grab the memo real quick. Hold on a second, please.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to put the conditions on the slide.
Eric, can you actually pull up the memo and post the memo, share the memo?
Sure, one
instead of
second.
the motions?
Those are numbers 1 through 7.
1 through 7.
Yes.
If you could
Okay.
add those.
I have them here. Conditions: 1, parking areas to be paved. 2, all lawn areas to be seeded. 3, the fabric storage structures must be removed to the rear yard area and no vehicles can be parked under them. 4, remove all the construction equipment, recreational vehicles, and trailers from the site. 5, stabilize the slope in the northeast corner of the property to protect the fencing from being undermined. 6, remove all the junk and debris from the site. 7, these conditions shall be fulfilled by the applicant prior to the issuance of CO, certificate of occupancy, for the apartments.
Very good. Thank you, Vice Chairman Claffey. We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
We have a second from Commissioner Woods. Any comments or questions? Noreen, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Surely. Commissioner Claffey,
Yes.
Commissioner Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Haggerty,
Yes.
Commissioner Havens,
Yes.
Commissioner Linares,
Yes.
Commissioner Woods,
Yes.
Chairman Payne.
Yes,
Unanimous.
very good. Thank you, Noreen.
You're welcome.
Petition 53-21 approved unanimously. The next petition, if I'm going to just read it, but then we're going to discuss it before we even talk about a motion. Petition 54-21 zoning text amendment, section 3.19.2 B1 to delete the requirement that residential developments in a PD zone be located on sites with direct access to the Berlin Turnpike or streets that directly connect to the Berlin Turnpike. Applicant Alan Bongiovanni. I want to check with the commissioners to see if they are comfortable with this yet, or whether or not they need additional time. Commissioner Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I have a question first for Renata. If
Certainly.
she thinks they've exhausted all attempts to try to find out the rationale for this change prior to 1988, or could they spend possibly a little bit more time and see if they can find the actual reason for this change? I'd like to know that. I know that they spend some time, but I'm just curious if she thinks going a little bit deeper would help in this meeting.
So I can.
Go ahead.
What I can say is that sure, we can look some more, but we have looked at all of the documents that we have in our office, and all of the former regulations, and actually Eric can speak to this a little bit more even than I can, that are filed with the town clerk. Now, with the former regulation books, there were these annex books. And I think some of these annex books are somehow misplaced or missing. So I'm not sure, perhaps we can spend some time looking to see if we can find those a little bit more. But that's one of the stumbling blocks that we came across, that we cannot find actual date when this was placed into the regulations, so that then we can look at actual minutes for either that year or something. The period is just too wide. Eric, do you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, I can. I did research a lot of the codes. We have a lot of codes around here. We don't have every iteration or every version, unfortunately. We have most everything from 1988 forward. Prior to that, it's a little spotty because we used to get, what I'm kind of holding up here, these supplements that when they updated the regulations, they had a company in Florida that printed these and distributed them. Some of these are missing from that time frame prior to 88. It's possible I can research more of the old TPZ minutes, but again, that's just hunting and pecking at this point, trying to find, where we have that 1974 to 1988 time frame of 15 years or so. So it's kind of difficult, but I can certainly spend some more time on that if that's what the commission would like.
Mr. Chairman, again, if I know it's a lot of work, but I would appreciate if we could put a little bit of effort into that. And I realize it's a monumental task. It's looking for a needle in a haystack, but it could be very helpful to us to understand why this took place. And I would appreciate it if they at least try.
Yes, absolutely. I don't have a problem with that, Commissioner
Thank you,
Woods.
Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Commissioner Claffey?
I agree with Mr. Woods, maybe also, and I know it's a monumental task. I agree with what Commissioner Woods said. But if we also look at other PD zones that may have had changes over the years, because then the biggest concern I have here is that we have a zone regulations for a PD zone, but after diving into it more and more recently, because as development spurs, the town doesn't have much left in it other than to redevelop land. Open space is very small. But I'd like to double check if there was recent PDs in other sections of town that came under changes, before my time, granted, in the different sections of town. People talked about many different places, PD zone around town, like North Mountain Road, Connecticut Avenue. But were there any changes in that same time frame for those areas? Maybe not specific to the Berlin Turnpike, but to non-Berlin Turnpike, because there are some PD zones that possibly have direct access to the Berlin Turnpike, but are on the other side of town, because they might exit out onto a road that connects to the Berlin Turnpike. So I think there's a lot more to this for me to feel comfortable than just saying, okay, we can change this, because, in actuality, it is very vague. There is no definition. I've spoke at length over my years and tenure on this committee or commission about how our definitions have been very lackluster. That was dating back to, I think, 2014-ish when I got on as an alternate. And that comes from a background in building construction and building consulting work on building codes and fire codes and zoning codes. So I think it does need a little more research to not just the PD zone, but anything around a PD zone that was changed back in the, mid 60s, 70s. You might have to go as far back as that.
We have to be careful because we can't enter any new information.
I understand.
Because
I understand that, but I guess what I'm getting at is to justify the lackluster defining definition and show that if you go to one side of town on a PD zone, you're under one regulation, which is kind of odd that in the same PD zone on the other side of town, you're on a different regulation, even though you're within the same regulation. It almost is like, was something created to spot zones, which we tried to get away, which we got away from over the last 25 years.
Correct.
So, and I'm not, I guess I misspoke, Mr. Chairman, not to open anything else, but just to prove to the fact that maybe, Eric, you can't have, zone one PD zone one way and then zone another PD zone another way.
I can ask the commission a question. Before both Renata and I started here in the planning department, you did a zone change for Willard Avenue at 129 Willard. You changed that to PD. Do you guys remember if this issue was discussed at that time? Because I don't believe that actually makes that connection.
No, that issue wasn't talked about when we changed that zone. Matter of fact, in all the years that I've been on TPZ, this issue has never come up that I ever recall.
Mr. Chairman, there's a misconception. Willard Avenue doesn't connect to the Berlin Turnpike.
Right.
Richard Street connects to the Berlin Turnpike.
Richard Street, yeah.
So.
Oh, and I brought that up because I want to make sure there weren't there are major roads that have some major connections to that Berlin Turnpike. And I don't know exactly where, I can't pinpoint every PD zone. But I agree with you,
Okay.
I'm not trying to open a bigger
Mr.
can.
Chair, if I may,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may interject just for a second. So this conversation is somewhat of a brainstorming session. I think people are trying to think about this application. And in some ways, some of the questions that they're raising are questions in their mind more than questions for us to answer. As you know, the public hearing is closed. We can only consider and deliberate on matters that are entered into the record. So I would really advise you just think about what's in the record, and then you are allowed to think about things. You don't, if you're not prepared to make a decision tonight, by no means don't do that, but just be mindful of asking for additional information because
Okay.
we may not be able to bring that to you.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Commissioner Claffey, Commissioner Woods kind of stole my thunder. I was going to start talking about that too. But as the planner says, that's kind of just brainstorming. But as far as this one particular issue is concerned, I think what is done here is they took an axe to the regulation and just threw out that one particular section there. And it seems to me that with the way this this is going from year to year to year to year, I think we do have to look at the entire regulation. And until then, I don't know what I want to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Fox. Well, I think that we need time to review all the information that's been presented to us. And I think we should table this until our next meeting. I'm not sure how everybody feels, but I think there's plenty of information here to review, and then we can discuss this at our next meeting. Is that acceptable to everybody?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'll move to table if you like.
Okay. Everybody in favor of tabling petition 54-21 until next meeting?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Any opposition? Anybody opposed? Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimous to table petition 54-21 until our next meeting. And if I could have Commissioner Lenars read our next petition 50-21, just the top there, please.
Petition 50-21 zoning text amendment, section 6.16 to add medical marijuana dispensary facilities and production facilities, adult use cannabis cultivator and micro cultivator to the PD zone, and to add adult use cannabis retailer, hybrid retailer, medical marijuana dispensary facilities to the PD and B zone. Applicant contact Newington TPZ.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, we're leaving the public hearing open, so we shouldn't even probably have read that. I'm sorry, Commissioner Lenars. If I'm not mistaken, we left petition 50-21 open.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. We did.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
No
Very good.
worries.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner Lenars.
No worries. I could use the practice.
Okay, and I'll turn it over to Renata. We have a couple petitions for scheduling. I'm gonna see if she wants to talk about those, and then after that is the town planner's report.
Yes, so we have an application to allow an LED lit sign on New Britain Avenue. We have also an application to allow crushing of earth products, but this is really an existing site. It is a Weber's nursery that each year does the sifting of product for about 10 years of a year. So they're just asking for special permit to be allowed to do this annually for 10 days out of each year, and they will come to you with a site plan and show this proposal. And then lastly, there is a special permit application to allow storage of motor vehicles at 249 Day Street. We have talked about this location. This is the property on intersection of Day Street and Francis Avenue or Francis Street. Francis Avenue, I believe. At any rate, this is one of those locations where last summer we were approached by a property owner who wanted to use this property in a certain way. We advised them to come to the planning commission and get permits. According to them, due to COVID and complications of them, they were just not able to retain professionals in time to prepare the site plan and necessary documents in time, but they were sort of pushed by the tenant to start using the site. So they began somewhat using the site a little bit prior to getting approvals, but they're legitimizing this use as the process requires them. So those are the three applications we have coming towards.
Okay. Very good. Any questions for Renata concerning that? Okay, you want to go into your town planner's report, Renata?
Yes, so first, I will just do my future agenda, which is posted online. You can see that Conservation Commission is seeing the application on 249 Day Street at their meeting on January 18th. Your next meeting, the 26th, I will schedule the special meeting for half an hour before. So your next meeting will be scheduled for 6:30, and we will start our discussion or my presentation with regards to accessory dwelling units. So that is that provision that we talked about prior when, we have to decide whether we are going to change our zoning regulations to allow accessory dwelling units as they are allowed by the state statutes, or we as a community are going to consider opting out of that. So we will start that conversation at the next meeting. We will start it at 6:30. It will be a special meeting to start with that. The following that, we have like our normal business agenda. There is a couple of applications for the regulation amendments. Most of this stuff I talked to you about. The one that was at the joint meeting last week, somebody asked about the commercial vehicles, and I noted that that was scheduled for the next meeting on the 26th, so that hearing is scheduled for next meeting. We have the freestanding sign on New Britain Avenue, and perhaps a modification of the site plan on Fenn Road. We just received that one, so we need to review it. That may be moved back and forth a little bit depending on what we come back with staff review. Then the zoning board has no applications, and then coming in February, you are going to have this application for Webster's Nursery, as well as 249 Day Street application before you. And then I will just give you a quick, I can't really give, I know everybody's interested to a follow-up to our joint meeting from last week. And unfortunately, I spent some time trying to arrange the initial phone call with the DOT. Just due to scheduling conflict, it was quite difficult. This morning, I had a very brief conversation with a DOT, and I followed that conversation by an email in which I included questions that we discussed at the special meeting. I'm waiting to get a response from them, and as soon as I get those responses, I will forward the email with questions and responses to both Town Council and Town Planning Commission. So I'm hesitant to give you an update and not give the Town Council an update when we had a joint meeting. So I kind of just want to tell you, just sit tight, I'm working on it. Once I receive the answers, I'll send it to both agencies, and then we will all have the same thing together. And that is all that I have for my report.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Renata. Any questions for Renata from the commissioners? Okay, the next thing on the agenda is communications. We've got the CROG letters. There was one that stood out to me in Rocky Hill, which is they're talking about accessory apartments within their town. I was wondering if you could follow that and maybe find out what they're doing on that, because eventually we're going to have to talk about that.
Mr. Chair, I have a running tally of every town in the state that's changing their regulations for accessory apartments. So we keep spreadsheet, and I'm looking at like every like the way everybody's changing it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already doing that. Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Is there any questions from the commissioners concerning anything on the CROG letters? Okay, hearing nothing. We also have the land use training guidelines coming up. I would advise everybody that those are going to be very important meeting. And I'm not sure yet whether or not we know whether it's going to be Zoom or in person. Correct, Renata?
So the land use training guidelines is actually, that's just a advisory policy document that they issued to tell you that starting next year, there will be a mandated 4 hours of training for zoning board of appeals and the planning commissions. Land Use Academy is looking more now that it's going to be a Zoom meeting with the COVID numbers and how everything is working out. We're very likely to, unfortunately, have to hold a Zoom Academy. You will know, obviously prior to the Academy, that meeting takes, when it's in person, it took about 2 hours and people would generally get quite engaged. So the presentation itself, I would say, is more maybe 45 minutes, but then, we would take 15 minutes break, people would mingle, get coffee and whatever, and then there would be a good hour of questions. Virtual format, I'm sure, is going to be different and it's probably going to be shorter in duration. So if there is like a good thing, then it's probably that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Okay, we have public participation for items not listed on the agenda. Speakers limited to 2 minutes. If there's anybody from the public.
Yep, we have one. Go ahead, Rose, you can unmute yourself.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. I guess I've been listening to too many meetings about where this train station is or is not going to be located. Correct me if you can't correct me right now because we don't have back and forth, but in listening to the presentation by the representative from Desegregate Connecticut and the Center for Latino Progress, it seems to me that he's pretty sure that the train station is going to be at Newington Junction. And listening to Terry Borgeson at a couple of meetings, he seems to think it's going to be on Cedar Street. And listening to the TPZ and the town council, I think that you're still looking for answers from DOT. And listening to residents, some in favor, some are not, and some don't think we need a train station at all. It just boggles my mind that we're doing studies around an area that we don't even know from DOT whether or not there's going to be a train station there or not. Just an observation, and I hope that people are paying attention to what's going on. And I hope the gentleman that wants a lot of participation puts some advertisement and maybe the Rare Reminder, or maybe gets a hold of Mark DiPaolo from the Rare Reminder and has a little article in the paper so he can get some people on that walk and not just do a walk around Newington Junction, but maybe walk around Cedar Street as well and see which is the better of the two locations for their study or whatever they want to do. Thank you again. Take care.
Okay, thank you, Rose. Anybody else wishing to speak? Anybody else from the public?
Doesn't appear so, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, we're at remarks by commissioners. Is there any remarks from the commissioners? We're on closing remarks from the chairman. I'd just like to say, I want to thank the staff, Eric and Renata. They've been doing an excellent job along with the rest of the team with the town. I just want to thank them both. You guys, I think, have been doing an amazing job. So thank you very much. And I want to thank the commissioners. And if there's nothing else, a motion to adjourn, please.
No move.
Motion made. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Stay warm.
Good night.
All right.